Hey guys, and welcome to this edition of Scruff's Garage. Today is like day 7 or 8 or something like that of the coronavirus quarantine. So hope you guys are doing well. If you're watching this in that time frame, hopefully by the time you watch this, we're long past all of this stuff. But be that as it may, I thought today would be a good chance to do some work on the Corvette. And one of the projects I've been needing to do for quite a while now is to repair the electronic brake control module. There are a number of reasons why it goes bad, but you'll get a number of error codes in the system. And even once I clear them, they come back immediately. So at this point, they're a hard code. They used to be kind of intermittent, and I'd get, service active handling, service ABS, all those warning lights. But now it's on all the time, and then when I clear the codes, they come back immediately. So time has come, I've got to do the repair. Typically it involves resoldering some joints on the relays there in the electronic brake control module. It's under the hood beside the ABS pump. So I'm going to walk you through the steps of getting it off and then how to reinstall it. And I'm also going to go through resoldering the solder connections as well. I'm not a professional electronics repair person, but if I can do it, I'm sure you can do it as well. Though if you don't feel comfortable, there are some companies that once you remove it, you can mail it off to them. And for not too much money, they'll do the repair for you and ship it back. But you'll still need to know how to take it off and put it back on. So whatever you're up for, we'll dive into it together and I'll walk you through the steps. Okay, so this is under the hood and we're looking directly at the electronic brake control module. You're looking towards the driver's side of the vehicle. As you see directly in front of you, there's a large wiring harness that plugs into the side of it. So step 1 is to pull that paddle, and I don't think I can hold the camera and do this at the same time, but it unclips, and then you can pull that plug out, and that'll give us a better view of the 6 screws that need to come out to remove the module from the side of the ABS pump. Okay, there it is. I unplugged the main wiring harness that goes to the electronic brake control module. You can see that's kind of tucked out of the way now. Now we can work on getting the 6 screws out that hold it in place. Okay, just a quick look. These are the 6 bolts that come out of the electronic brake control module that hold it to the ABS pump. These are a Torx. It's a T20 driver. So most of them one of them I got to with just a standard Torx driver. Most of them I got to with an extension, plus I have a kind of a long reach Torx bit. I'll show you once I get it the module out. Sometimes if it's just a stubby, like a socket style Torx bit, it can be difficult to get in there. So this worked out reasonably well, and I could get in there with a electric impact driver on the end of the extension and get them out. It does take some finagling. There's no here's just the easy way to get them out. You'll just kind of have to work with it and see what you can get done. I messed with it for maybe 20-30 minutes and I got all the 6 of them out. So I'll show you, we need to separate the module from the ABS pump now, so I'll show you that piece of it. Okay, there's not always a great way to get the camera in here so you can see what's going on. It's just kind of tucked down in here. But this is your ABS pump. You can see all the brake lines coming out of it. They go to the front and back and that sort of thing. On the front of it, of course, is the electronic brake control module. That's what we need to separate. All the screws are out of it now, so it's just a matter of getting in there with maybe a flathead screwdriver, and you'll have to work on getting it to separate. And you'll just have to work it kind of top and bottom and the sides, but you can kind of get in there, you can kind of pry it sideways just a little bit, and you'll hear it start to pop. I don't know if you can see that started to separate already. So kind of work it around, be gentle with it, don't force anything, you don't want to damage it, but you should be able to get it to separate. Okay, so here's the electronic brake control module out of the vehicle. So this is the large plug that we originally removed. What I didn't show you, I didn't see it initially, there's also a plug on the bottom as well. You just have to press in the tab and it disconnects, but you'll need to disconnect that as well to get it out of the car. The screws that we took out were these. So they went, maybe a sad shot to help you see a little better, there, there, and there. So hopefully this angle gives you a little better visual. We were talking earlier about what type of Torx bit you use to get at these screws. So I was using this kind of extended reach T20, and of course it goes down in there, no problem. The challenge you may run into if you're using a Torx bit that's on a socket end, often as you try to go down in there, it's not, the socket piece of it will be too large and you can't quite reach down in there. You could probably get to the bottom one, that would probably be okay, but this one and the top one would probably be difficult. So that's where this style kind of extended Torx bit comes in handy, because it can get down there in the recessed pocket. So hopefully that visual helps you know what you're trying to get to, and you can pick out the right tool and you don't have too many frustrations with it. So our next step will be to take apart the lid, if you will. So these are a T15, they're a little bit smaller. There's 4 of them, right? So 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then this lid is siliconed on here, so it's not going to come right off, but I'll get these out and then we'll move on to the next step. Okay, so once you've got the 4 screws on the lid out, probably the most difficult part of this is getting to the lid to separate from the body portion of it, because it's silicone together, like it's packed with silicone, and that does not let go without a fight. So this is probably the most difficult part of the whole procedure, is getting this to separate. You'll find that there's an access hole here on the back side. It'll just have clear silicone in it when you initially take it off. So pick out the silicone, and there'll just be an open hole here. What I ended up doing, the general premise of what you want to do is to tap this hole and then run a bolt in there to force separate the lid from the case. So what I had available was an M6 bolt. So I ended up needing to drill and tap this hole. So obviously I had a tap for an M6 by 1.0, which matched the threads of my bolt. And this is a 50 millimeter long bolt, and anything less than that may not work as well, because you need more than just the general depth. You actually want to push this thing apart, because the entire way it's fighting you and it's still sealed together. So a 50 millimeter bolt ended up working pretty well. An M6 hole needs a pallet hole of 5 millimeters. Of course, all of my drill bits are not metric, they're standard. So this ended up being, what was this? This is a 13/64 hole or drill bit. It's slightly larger than a 5 millimeter, or if you didn't have that, a 3/16 is slightly smaller than a 5 millimeter, but you could probably make that work as well. And then tap the hole all the way through. So what you'll see, if I can pull this apart, using the M6 actually drilled in a pretty good ways. I don't know if you can see it or not, my handy dandy pointer, but you'll see it actually threaded even down into the case. So beyond just the boss here, it tapped all the way to the very bottom, and that's probably because I was using the M6 bolt. But I don't know if something smaller would have worked as well. I can't say for sure, but I can tell you the M6 did work. So, and the other thing I'll say, use a bolt that's something other than like a Phillips head. This is obviously a hex drive, but whether you could put a socket on it, or this is a hex cap screw or whatever, but just not a Phillips head. You probably won't be able to put enough force without stripping out the top of a Phillips head to force all of this stuff apart. So just keep that in mind as well. So once you finally get the case to separate, once you run the bolt through, it'll kind of open up just a little bit, and then you can use like a flathead screwdriver, and you'll just have to work your way around the whole thing, because like I said, there's silicone the whole way around, and just slowly pry up until you'll hear it kind of separate, and then it's still a matter of working through all the silicone to get it to separate completely. But if you keep working at it, just go gentle, don't force it, not too much pressure just on one side, because you don't want to bend the case, the lid or the body. Just work it evenly all the way around, and it will finally separate. So now we're at the point to re-solder a couple of the solder joints. And let's see if I can get this where there's not a horrible glare on it, and that you can see what we're going to do. Let's see, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, kind of 4 of them in kind of a square, and then the one in the center there is a little offset. But those are the 5 that we're going to reflow the solder on. That's for the relay. So if you match up the white relay, you'll be able to figure out which pins go to that. So that's our next step, is the soldering portion of it. So we'll keep moving. Okay, I just finished resoldering the solder joints for the relay on the circuit board. So while things are cooling off, I thought I'd just show you what I was using. So I bought, in the past, if you've seen the video where I did repair the driver's door control module, you saw I had a butane powered soldering iron. I had mixed success with that, so I figured I would try a new soldering iron. This is just like an electric plug-in type of soldering iron, and I really didn't spend that much money on it. This was maybe 30-40 bucks on Amazon. It's got a digital readout, and you can adjust it up or down, and it gets hot really quick. So this is the first time I've really had a chance to use it, but I would say I'm pretty happy with it. What I found to be a success, at least I hope it's is a success, I would put the tip of the soldering iron on the top of the joint, and then you can see it, the solder kind of liquefy, it kind of changes colors, and then I would touch just a bit more solder to it. Doesn't take much, but it adds a little bit, and it reflows the solder, because that's what we're trying to repair, is that there's a broken solder joint in one or all of these. So that seemed to work reasonably well. We'll know for sure once we put it back in the car, and we'll test it. What you may also find to be helpful, let me put this down so I don't burn myself. Let's see if I can zoom out. I also got one of these lights. It's a magnifying glass. Yeah, there we go. It's a magnifying glass, and it's got an LED light on the bottom of it, and like a just kind of a weighted base. There's also this comes loose, and there's a clamp that goes with it. But I really like this for doing some soldering. Of course, you know, a wet sponge and a little soldering iron scrubber thing. So like I said, I'm not a professional at this by any means. Really, I've just learned to solder trying to keep this Corvette together. Lovely GM electronics. But so anyway, that's what's got to be done. I reflowed the solder on all 5 of those. Next step, we'll start putting things back together. Before we silicone everything back together, we'll just lightly test fit it, put it back on the car. I'll turn the key on, and let's see if all the codes go away. Okay. So like as I discussed, you want to make sure that your repair was successful. So put it back together, put the 4 screws in, and then go test it on the vehicle. Before you seal this up with silicone, which is where I'm at with it now, you want to put it on the car, hook up your sensors. I just put 2 of the bolts in just to hold it in place against the ABS pump. Like I said, hook up all your sensors, your mass airflow, the air bridge, whatever else you've taken off, so that you can start the car and make sure that you don't have any codes. You shouldn't have any service active handling, no service, ABS, all those warning lights that you were probably getting previously. So that's what I did, just to make sure that my solder repair was done properly and that this still worked. So everything checked out great, so that's good news. I went ahead and cleared, I had a history code for a C1214, I think it was. I went ahead and cleared that out, started the car, let it run for a second, and no codes came back. So I feel confident with the repair. Now we can go put it back together. So I just used some clear silicone. This is Loctite. So anyway, I ran a bead. I kind of had the lid separated from the case just a bit, and I ran a bead in there around the edges and then smushed it together, put my bolts in, and then wiped away any of the excess. And of course, everything's sticking to it now. The hole in the back where we drilled and tapped for a bolt, make sure you put silicone in there so that you don't get any water intrusion in there either. So at this point, we're ready to put it back on the vehicle for the final assembly. So that's what we'll do next. Okay, so that pretty much wraps it up. Of course, the installation is the reverse. You've got the 6 bolts that go in. Get all those in, then hook up your electrical connections, and then put the air bridge back. Make sure you hook up the mass airflow sensor as well. For getting to the 6 bolts, I found this combination to work fairly well. So this is kind of that extended reach Torx bit. I don't know, it's probably like a 6-inch extension, and then just the end of a 1/4-inch driver. And that allowed me to snake my way back there to get to most of them. Because all of these bolts, you want to seat them by hand. Don't run them in with like an impact, something like this. You run the risk of stripping them if you don't get them lined up correctly. For a couple of them, the 2 top ones, I also took a magnet, and I'd put the bolt on the end of the magnet, and I kind of fished it into place, and then I could get it started that way. You'll see when you're in there, it's just hard to get both hands in there to get a bolt started sometimes. So hopefully this helps give you a tip. It's not difficult, it's just tricky to get to. So give it a little bit of time. But overall, the whole project, actually less difficult than I thought it was going to be. I was a little intimidated by it. And I'd put it off for a while, but honestly, it wasn't too bad. So I hope this helps. If you have any questions about the process, soldering and that sort of thing, let me know. Hit me up in the comments. I'll answer anything that I can for you. As always, if you enjoy this sort of content, if you hit the like button and subscribe to the channel, I put out new stuff fairly regular, so hopefully you can stay up to date on that. So as always, thanks for tuning in to this edition of Scruff's Garage. We'll see you next time.